Hi, welcome to this video on using the Ti-nspire graphing calculator. And what we're going to focus on this video is how to use the graphing tab or the graphing feature in the calculator. We're going to run through a series of steps in order to illustrate how to use the graphing technology and some things that you might use the graphing technology for by graphing this function here, v of x. And we're going to do some things. We're going to find zeros, maximums, x coordinates of minimums, all values in which a function equals another value or another function, also known as the intersection. And we're also going to show you how to utilize a stored function in order to evaluate a certain value. So without further ado, we're going to go ahead. If you want to follow along on your Ti-nspire, you can start at the home page. If you already have some tabs open, you can click number 4 or use, again, your cursor here to click current, or you can click one new. But I'm going to go ahead and open up a new document. So Control Doc will open up a new doc, and I'm going to add a graph. So you'll notice here you have a input line where it's asking you to input a function, f1 of x equals. Just note you can go ahead, you can change your variable here to another variable if you want. Usually we leave it in terms of x, and f1, if you didn't want to name it f1, you can name it v if you want, okay? But it's fine if you leave it as f1. And it says equals, we're going to go ahead and input our function here. So we were asked to graph 2.38 times e to the power of negative. Notice your negative button is here. Do not use subtraction. You'll get an error button, or a syntax error message. 0.02x. Your variables, all your alpha buttons are down here, and we have x. So we'll go ahead and use x. And then I want to get out of the exponent, so I can hit the over button. And we're multiplying times sine. So your trig functions are right here next to the 7, trig. And I want sine of, and I have pi over 56. An important button that you want to remember is Control Divide. And what that does is it opens up a rational expression where you have a numerator, which we want pi. So pi is right down here next to the h in the alpha section. Pi over 56 times x, okay? And in order to graph, I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to hit enter. And you'll see we have a curve right here, which might not be, the best curve. And the first thing I'm going to show you is how to go ahead and adjust what's called a window, what you're looking at or what you're looking through. So you'll want to go to Menu, and the window settings are here. And there's some different things that you can do. You can go ahead, you can zoom in by clicking Menu, Window. You can zoom out by clicking, so if you wanted to zoom out. There's also the window, the box tool, which is nice. It allows you to select, which part of the graph specifically you want to look at. And there's also, which is what we're going to use here, is the window settings. So just number 1, and it allows us to specifically say, hey, where do I want to look? And our problems, they asked us to look on the interval 0 to 90. So I'm going to make my minimum 0, maximum 90, and then my y scale, I can just leave that, and I can leave my steps, how far each increment is at auto. That's fine. Okay, and so now you'll see as we got this window for our domain 0 to 90, we have a much better view of our graph. So let's go ahead and go back to this tab. Let's see what we had to do. They say find the zeros of v of x on 0 to 90. So what I'm going to go ahead and do, how you analyze a graph is you click Menu, and you'll want to click here number 5 where it says, number 6 where it says Analyze Graph. So we're going to analyze graph. And here's the 4 things that you'll need to know how to do with a graph in this course. One is find the zeros. So here's a 0, and you'll notice that this dashed line, it's not an asymptote, this dashed line kind of pops up and it says, down here in the corner, it says lower bound. So it says, okay, so where do you want to start to look for a 0? So you're going to click once, and just hopefully visually you can identify the 0 as right here where it crosses the x-axis. That's where the function's equal to 0. So I'm going to click left of that, and then as I click and then I start to go ahead and drag to the right, you'll see that that 0 is highlighted. So then I can click again, and then there is my 0. So my 0 is at 56. So I'm going to say here x equals 56. That's the answer. That's where the 0 is. Okay, so next they said find the maximum of v of x on 0 to 90. So when they say find the maximum, visually we can see that's the greatest point, right? The highest point, and that would be roughly right here. So again, we're going to go menu, I'm going to go to analyze graph, and I'm going to click maximum, and hopefully yours doesn't grab like that. So, and you should get the same dashed line. So we want our lower bound and then our upper bound, and you can see here that this occurs at 22 and the maximum is 1.4. In this course, we'll always want 3 decimal places. So I'm a little wary when I see only 1 decimal place, just because we want to be extremely accurate. And so what I want you to do right now is I want you to check what's called your float. And so how you're going to do this in the graphing tab is you're going to click menu, settings, and then just make sure that your display digits, see here, you'll want to go, I don't know, 7 is probably good, but the bigger the better. You want at least to see 3 decimal places. So you can see here that we got much more precise and exact when we increased our float. So again, that was menu, settings, and then that was float. Okay. So our maximum, the maximum of v at this point is 1.446, or if we round 7, 1.447. So I'm going to go back here. I'm going to say maximum of 1.447. So that's the y value. That's the y value. Notice I'm using that's the maximum. The input occurs at 21.895 or 8956, but that's not the maximum. The maximum is the y value. So a different posed question. So notice, contrast that with our next question, which is number 4. They say find the x coordinate of the minimum. Find the x coordinate of the minimum. So here they're not asking for the minimum, which would be the y value. Here they're asking for the x coordinate. So we're going to go back to our graph and we're going to find the minimum, which we can see occurs maybe somewhere in here. So again, menu, we'll analyze our graph, and this time we're going to click minimum. So I'm going to find the minimum, and I'll go left, and I'll drag, and there is our y value. If you hover over a ordered pair and you hold down on your trackpad, your hand, the little hand that's grabbing right there, will close like that, and you can move the coordinates, so that way you can get a better look. So here it says 77.896. 77.896. X equals 77.896 is where the minimum is. Okay. Sorry, it's an improper sentence, but I'm just a math guy. Okay, and then the last question that they had for us was find all x values of x for which v of x equals 0.5. So we want to know when is this function equal to 0.5. And we're going to solve that by graphing another function of 0.5. How you can do this, 2 ways you can do this. One, you can hover with your trackpad right over your function and you can double click, and you'll notice that your function pops up, and then you're just going to hit the down arrow and you can graph another function. Another way to do this, which is much simpler, is you just hit the tab button and you'll notice another function pops up. So hit the tab button and we're going to input 0.5. So 0.5, and we can see that secondary function, which is here. So what we want to do is we want to find the intersections. I want to find the x value of all the intersections. So I'm going to go menu, analyze graph, and I want intersection. So again, the same idea. Click left, click right, and there's our first answer. 4.101 So that's our first one. So x equals 4.101, comma, and our second value, because they intersect twice, so we have two solutions here, is going to be 46.084. 46.084. All right. Lastly, before I go, one cool thing resulting from graphing functions is that it will define a function in your calculator, so that way you can use the calculator tab in order to evaluate. So what we're going to go ahead and do is I'm going to open up another tab, and this one's going to be the calculator. And since I graph the function, it's stored in my calculator. I don't have to retype it over again. And it's stored right above the button 9 in this button called VAR. And you'll see when you click this, you'll see two functions that pop up. Depending upon how you defined your function in the graphing tab, you'll see them. So here's our function v, which we originally used. And then here's that secondary function, that 0.5 function. So both of these functions are stored. And we were asked, what is v of 30? So I'm going to click the function v, and you'll notice parentheses, and it's saying, what is v of what? So we're going to enter our value 30 here. We're going to enter it, and you'll notice that it spits out our answer. So 1.298. Okay, so v of 30 equals 1.298. Okay, and we have evaluated the function. So it's pretty cool. It stores the function. You can go ahead, you can evaluate v of 4, get a value. You can use f1, which was that constant function 0.5. So what's f1 of 100? Well, it's a constant function, so the answer is going to be 0.5. Again, I could plug in f1 of 1. The answer is going to be 0.5. Doesn't matter what you plug in a constant function, you're going to get 0.5. Okay, so in this video, we went over how to graph a function. We went over the analyze graph tools, how to find zeros, max, mins, intersections, how that graph function is stored, and we also went over how to adjust the window settings on your function. Give this video a thumbs up, subscribe. I'll catch you in the next Ti-nspire video. See ya.